Hey students, so a lot of you have indicated that you've been having a little bit of difficulty with the parts of the cell. So I thought I'd take an opportunity to make a little video for you that you could review at home. And as we have tests and quizzes coming up, I don't want anyone to feel overwhelmed because this, for many of you, is the first time that you have learned anything about cells, particularly about the organelles and the parts of the cell. So I thought we'd begin by really talking about what really makes up a cell. So I'm going to begin by drawing, and this is going to be an animal cell. It is a little bit easier to start with animal cells because there's less features to the animal cell than there is in the plant cell. So I have my I guess diagram that I've drawn here of the cell. It is a circular feature, and I chose a circle. It's often misleading because a lot of times, just because the diagrams are drawn as circles, a cell doesn't necessarily, or an animal cell doesn't necessarily have to be a perfect circle, but it is most often drawn this way. So if you see a diagram of an animal cell, it will almost always be a circle. So the outside layer, if you guys can remember, is this fancy thing. We did a lab on it on the with bubbles, and we created this beautiful cell membrane. If you remember, the cell membrane is what gives shape to the cell. It's what provides protection and support to the cell, but also it's this very fancy layer that is smart enough to know, hey, I'm going to let you in the cell. You're something I want. Your water, your nutrients, your things that we want to have inside of our cell. Hey, your waste. We want to let you out of the cell. And it's also smart enough to recognize things that we don't want to have in the cell. So the cell membrane is a very complex structure. In 7th grade, we really are only going to discuss the cell membrane as being a fatty layer that keeps good stuff in, keeps bad stuff out. So inside of the cell, we have this really nifty little feature, and I'm going to use a larger pen here, and it looks a little like this. It's a little bit more complicated than how I've kind of drawn, but this is going to be our cell's nucleus. The nucleus is the brain of the cell. It's the control center. It's what determines the activity in the cell. It controls the majority of activity. In addition, it's got these little fancy things that we're going to learn more about in 4th quarter called chromosomes. It is the DNA. It's the genetic material. So this, my friends, is our cell's nucleus. And it is very, very important. The nucleus has, in addition to the cell having the cell membrane, you have this very thin little layer that also surrounds the nucleus that we will talk about called the nuclear membrane. It acts very similar to the way the cell membrane works in that it offers structure and protection to the cell's nucleus. We don't want to lose all that good genetic material in there. So it is the protective layer to the nucleus. So earlier in the week, we did this kind of nifty lab where we were looking at different candies that represent the organelles. And if you recall, we used something that was red, and they were hot tamales. We used those to represent the mitochondria. And many cells have, cells have many mitochondria. And one of the things that we talked about a couple times is that different types of cells, different tissue types will have different number of mitochondria. Mitochondria serve as the energy producers of the cell. It converts sugars into energies that the cell can use. So as I said, many tissues have different numbers. So for example, muscle cells, muscle tissue, will have a larger number of mitochondria because they need to produce more energy than any other sort of cell in the body. So they often will say they have a sausage shape. They are typically oval, and often in diagrams, not always, you will see them depicted as red, and you will often see that they have this kind of a odd wavy structure in the middle. That's not to go into too much detail. You guys will learn more about that as you move into high school biology. But that structure is the internal structure to the mitochondria that's specific to mitochondria. So, in addition to the ones that I have already labeled, you may also, or not may, you definitely will also see an organelle that is hanging out. Now, just because I've drawn them in orange here doesn't mean that they're always in orange. We talked about diagrams are often left up to what the artist wants to depict, but these little structures here that I've drawn, we're going to label these as vacuoles. These are the areas in which the cell stores the food, or the nutrients, to be more specific, the water and the waste in the cell. So vacuoles are a very, very, very important part. Now, one thing I have not labeled yet that I'm going to put in is what is all this space in the back of the cell, this stuff back here. So you have in your cell a gel-like fluid that fills in and is kind of holds all of the organelles in place, and it's a very, very interesting stuff. It's called cytoplasm. So all of this space inside the cell is formed called the cytoplasm. So you will, that's been the one that I've noticed a lot of students have been the most confused about. The cytoplasm is just all the fluid that is filling in the cell. Now, one of the things that I wanted to move on, I was going to talk for a moment. Let me go ahead and clear this off. One of the other things I wanted to show you was about our plant cell, because the plant cell has a couple of other features. So in a plant cell, I have a cell membrane, okay? I have a nucleus. I have a nucleus, okay? I have my mitochondria. Okay, all those things are also found in the cell. Oh, almost forgot. I also have my my nuclear membrane. Okay, but one of the couple other things that we have in a plant cell that you would not have in an animal cell is the first being, you have this extremely rigid, it's a hard outer layer of the cell called a cell wall. It's on the outside of the cell membrane. Yes, the cell membrane is still there. It's on the inside of the cell wall. It's what provides the structure to plants. Remember, we talked about how humans and animals had different skeletal structures, either in the form of an exoskeleton if you are an insect, or like in the case of humans, we have a internal skeleton. But plants have a structural support called a cell wall. In addition to having a cell wall, which provides support, you also have something that we call a large central vacuole. And I will write that in. A lot of my students have been saying large center vacuole, but it's a large central vacuole. And that large central vacuole is just a place where water is stored. It also aids or helps in the way that the plant has support. So this is the large central vacuole is often filled with some water, and especially if the plant is well hydrated, that's when you have the plant is sitting very rigid and able to stand upright. So the final thing you also see in plants are these green things. And students seem to be getting this pretty well because you guys had great support with your 6th grade teachers. You have these things that are called chloroplasts. And so I'm going to label those. Remember, chlorophyll is made in my chloroplasts. So wonder why an animal cell doesn't have a chloroplast. Well, that's because an animal cell does not need chlorophyll because we do not get our energy from the sun. So again, my video is right at 10 minutes. I was trying to keep it as minimal as possible. So I just want to sign off here. If you have any questions, please, never hesitate to send me an email. I'll be glad to help. So hope this video was a little bit of support to you. Certainly, reach out if you have any additional questions. Thanks.